Normalize Black women expressing their emotions without labeling it as an attitude, as reposted on Instagram by TGIN Natural. Hello everyone, it's Toya Talks here, the Toya Talks podcast. I almost got my words mixed up there. I am uncharacteristically more tired than usual today, but we're going to push through. I'm not really too sure why I'm this exhausted. I have a large cup of coffee, extra strong, and of course a brand new spanking episode because it is Tuesday, and every Tuesday, as we all know, is a brand new episode of the Toya Talks podcast. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Toya Washington, and for those of you who are reoccurring listeners, hello, welcome back, and let's get into it. So I set you guys some homework last week, and I do want to say thank you for all the feedback of last week's episode. But last week I set you some homework, right? Some informal homework, and I asked you, if you haven't already, or even if you have, to recap on a past episode, which is episode 64, which is a dilemma episode. Toya Talks, I need your help. Less than 6 hours after my performance review, my role has been advertised. And then episode 65, under construction. Now, before we get into the outcome of that dilemma, because I go into a lot of detail, especially in episode 64 of her dilemma, and I spoke through how I kind of responded to her dilemma, and based on everything that this young Black queen has learned from the Toya Talks podcast, she made a formal complaint, and she took it very serious. She went down a very serious route with her employer. An example of her mistreatment was, as the title says, when she had a performance review, less than 6 hours later, her job is advertised. She hasn't been let go of, none of those things. And I gave advice in that episode, but this Black queen wanted me to represent her, and unfortunately I was unable to do that, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on. But before we get into the meat, the rudiment flesh of this episode, I do want to talk about a couple of things, and then we can go into the crux of this episode. So I knew how I was going to start this podcast episode, and then, as the ancestors will have it, something will always happen to lend itself to a very topical, a very important topic and issues that the ancestors want me to bring to the podcast. And if you know anything about me, if you don't, I'm very spiritual, and my ancestors have always got me covered. Where do I even start? So let's just, let's just strip it back. Strip it all the way back. For the last year, I've had to do a lot of healing. And in order to heal, you have to take the plaster off. In order to heal, you have to treat the wound. I have always had an issue with centering myself. And it's come from being the oldest, being the only girl. It's come from constantly being made to feel as though I'm not valid in my emotions, and that I'm not supposed to have expectations of people, but people are supposed to levy their expectations on me. Sorry about that. But people are supposed to levy their expectations on me. And I think what's happened is I've grown up with that. So I find it very hard to celebrate wins, because it would require me to center myself. And what has then happened is I end up always being at the short end of a relationship. So a short end of a friendship, a short end of family relationships, because I've always been positioned as the person who people are constantly taking from. And I think it's very toxic, especially in African households, whereby there is an expectation as the oldest that you are almost like the experiment, or more so that you're supposed to just accept things and not question things. And you are the person that's supposed to take it for the team all the time. And I think what happens is you grow with that, and then you take it into life, you take it into the world of work. So already when you enter the world of work, a lot of us are entering with baggage of not knowing how to deal with our emotions, not understanding how to center ourselves. And in not knowing how to center yourself, you're also not learning the skill of celebrating yourself, celebrating your wins, celebrating what makes you uniquely you. And the last year I've had to work on that. And it's still something that I find a challenge, but I'm better than I was last year in centering myself and in doing things that make me happy for me, as opposed to constantly sacrificing for others who will not and have not sacrificed for me. One of my toxic traits is the ability for me to just cut someone off. But I don't just do it out of the blue. I don't just cut someone off, right? I sound warnings. And I become very vocal about what is upsetting me. And then when I become vocal about what's upsetting me, I want to see changed behavior. I want to see something different, especially when the person... I used to think sorry was accountability. The word sorry isn't accountability. Change behavior is accountability. Because words are a comfort to a fool. Yeah? When somebody treats you or shows you who they are, you believe them. It's actions. It's not the words. So when someone is instantly willing to just apologize without accountability, I've got a problem with that. Because for me, how I need my emotions acknowledged is by change behavior. It isn't necessarily the words. And I didn't realize that. Okay, so I was going years and years and years and years trying to figure out kind of why certain relationships break down. And it wasn't just because I walked away from them. It was more because I sounded the alarm and I wasn't respected enough that my pleas, my conversations were acknowledged. But instead, because I had that toxicity from family and I had that toxicity from other relationships, I took it into friendships and the world of work. So I always allowed myself to be trampled on and used. Yeah. Because also as well, there was a toxicity related to the fact that if I'm being used, that I'm wanted and I'm needed. And I definitely can see how that made its way into the world of work. I would put up with being verbally abused, emotionally and mentally abused at work. And the way I looked at it is, if I just continue like this, if I just keep my head down, you know, it will change. Or if I continue to just accept this bad behavior, at some point they're going to see it as me being dedicated to this role and me wanting to really succeed. But all that happens is you become crushed, you become a shadow of yourself, and you then develop the continuation of that toxicity that you've carried maybe from the home, from past relationships, and now it seeped its way into your everyday life. And then your whole existence is predicated on you being used, taken advantage of, abused, mentally, psychologically, taken the piss out of. I realised that in order for me to respect myself, I had to put boundaries in place. And it started with work. Because for me, work was easier to put boundaries than family. Because with family, there is emotions involved, okay? That is kind of like the heartstrings. Whereas with work, it was different. But my thing is, if you could do it at work, you can do it at home. So as I started to navigate the world of work and understand the complexities and the mental requirement to be able to show up to work as myself, set my boundaries, and you know, you've heard throughout the podcast, it was not like a straightforward journey. I then had to turn my attention to my personal life. So family, friends. And that was a lot harder because you're emotionally vulnerable when it comes to family and friends in a way that you shouldn't be at work. At work, it's a different type of vulnerability. It is you can turn up to work as your representative. You can go in the toilet and have a cry, but you are never fully your 100% self at work because you're always taught that that's not good enough. You're always taught that, well, for me, I was always taught that representative that showed up to work is what needed to be at work to be able to succeed. So then turning up to work as myself never really had, I never really had the opportunity to. And equally as well, I was still developing who I was as a person. I was still trying to figure out who I was. I think that if we take a step back and look a bit in our home lives, our personal lives, our friendships, I think it's easy for us to then identify the level of toxicity in which we have just accepted as a foundation of our existence. I think for me personally, I never had boundaries in my personal life. I was always used to being the sacrifice. So then I was used to then going to work and sacrificing myself. I am an overachiever because I always felt like I had something to prove and I wanted to be accepted. So at work, I would go to the ends of the earth. I'd make myself almost ill, especially in my younger years, because I felt like I wanted to belong. I wanted someone to see how good I was. I wanted acceptance, and an acceptance that I never, ever, ever felt that I ever got just normally in my day-to-day life. So for me, work became that for me. And I then developed a very toxic relationship with work until I got to a point of understanding the role that work plays in my life. And having to now unlearn a lot of things that I learned in my personal life that seeped its way into every other part of my life has been a journey. It's been a journey of understanding that some people lack the ability to change because they don't have the capacity to accept often where they've fallen short. And being introspective is not the ability of everyone to be. I'm very, 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 very introspective. And I think part of it is because I've always been so hard on myself. Again, I link it to being the oldest. I think when you're the oldest, there is a level of responsibility you carry on your shoulders. And to be quite honest with you, it ends up weighing you down. It ends up being too much. And then you almost get into a perpetual cycle of mentally abusing yourself, because then you place unhealthy expectations on yourself based on the expectations family and friends place on you. I realise who I am. I realise that I'm a very loving person. I'm a very giving person. I think once I open my heart to someone or people, I can do anything for them. And I think people can see that, especially those who can't meet you at that place too. And rather than center you when you are doing good things, people find it easier to center themselves, especially when they know that you lack the ability to center and celebrate yourself. So they're quite happy to steal your thunder, take your shine. I realised that in setting boundaries in my personal life, I was re-establishing the rules of engagement with me. And it's been really tough because I think sometimes when you are used to a certain cycle of relationships and a certain cycle of how things have always been, when you make the decision to seek change, you often regress back to what you're used to, even though you know it's not the healthiest space for you to be. Listen, I hope this is making sense, because I'm literally speaking from the heart. This is not scripted. Nothing in this podcast is ever scripted. I'm really just being vulnerable in a way that I think is important, especially as Black women, because we're not celebrated in our vulnerability. And there's a strength in being vulnerable, because the strength that you take from vulnerability is understanding that, number one, that you are allowed to step into that vulnerability. It's okay. Creating safe spaces to be vulnerable is a strength, because you're tapping into another emotion that brings out something different in you. And that in itself is beautiful, especially when that emotion is being described or explained in a way, I think, that is encouraging, but more importantly, allows you to kind of decompress, if that makes sense. I received a text message today from someone, and the text message, if this had been sent last year, it would have crushed me, because I just thought that I meant more to that person than just a generic message. And I read this message and I thought to myself, everything I have ever done for this person, all the love I have shown this person, all the advice, all the time, everything I've poured into this person, I'm not even worth acknowledging. And ordinarily, if this was before I started working through and healing from past trauma, I would have internalized that. But what I actually did, and I felt myself doing it, was when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. Because the words doesn't show you who they are, it's their actions. And whilst one of my toxic traits are to just cut someone off, I don't just cut someone off. There is a process that happens. But in distancing myself, I have to protect myself. And I think that it's a healthy way to protect myself, because the unhealthy way when I was in my 20s was to have an argument. And I felt like if we put it all out there, we put it all on the table, then everyone knows where they stand. But in anger, you're not actually expressing how you feel. You're expressing the anger that lives underneath how you feel. And growing up, I always had a temper. I had a really bad temper because I had problems with expressing my emotions, because I was taught that you don't express emotions, or I was taught that showing emotion, expressing emotion was a form of weakness. So all that happened is I bottled up all that emotion, and it came out in anger. It came out in how I dealt with work. If someone spoke to me in a way I didn't like, I would blow up. If a manager was rude to me, I would walk out. There was one time when a manager was so disrespectful, I stood on the table and I was like, I quit. Your job's shit, you're shit, and your husband's going to leave you. Yeah, I was in my early 20s. Jumped off the table, collected my stuff and walked out. I'm telling you, Toya in her early 20s was a different person. I speak in the third person when I say this, because it feels so far removed from who I am now. But I understand that the journey that I had to go through, that turmoil, that up and down emotion, has led me to who I am now. And the level of introspection I have on self means that no one can tell me about me. I know me better than anybody. I think that when I got the text, not feeling anger, but feeling vindicated that I had made the right choice to remove this person out of my life. Because disrespect shows up in different ways. Yeah? Let me just say something. And I'm going to say it about family. We place expectations on family because we maybe same blood, maybe history, growing up together, and also what you define as family is not necessarily blood. It could be, someone you grew up with, somebody who adopted you, took you in as their own. That whatever family you define as family is what family means to you, okay? But you do realise that when people are used to you being a certain way, i.e. they're used to you being the person that they can just take from, when you reach a realization of who you are, the boundaries you need to set, and understanding that you are allowed to center yourself, giving yourself permission to be happy, those people who are used to you being their bedrock, they can't cope with that, because that means you're no longer centering them. And if you're no longer centering them, they can't then rely on you to constantly see them as the center, as if center doesn't belong to you too. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? I definitely feel as though when I set the rules of engagement, no one took me seriously. And no one took me seriously because I used to say it. I always used to say what I would do, say how I would behave, say how I would react, but I had no follow through. But the saying was the alarm of, hey, I'm warning you, I'm warning, hello, it's the warning. And everyone ignored it. So now what's happened is that toxicity that I have, and it is born, there is a toxicity in cutting people off. There is a level of it, you have to admit that. But I don't think there is anything wrong with it if I'm doing it to protect myself. In doing it to protect myself, the reaction from people has been mind-blowing. because they don't know how to respond to it. How dare this person that has always seen themselves as nothing, how dare this person who has always been there, how dare this person choose themselves and walk away? That's the reaction I'm getting. So when I got this text, there was many thoughts that came to mind, but it reaffirmed that I was right to remove myself. And that if people do not acknowledge what you bring to the table, if people do not acknowledge and appreciate it through their actions, they never will. It's almost like you're waiting for that light bulb moment that will never happen. And it will never happen until the person who's constantly in receipt of what you sacrifice takes a step back and does some introspection and understand and appreciate your value. And until that is done, until that person has the ability and the capacity to do that, you will never move forward in that relationship unless you're willing to accept that as part and parcel of your relationship. My relationships no longer work like that. Last year, I made a conscious decision about how my relationships would work with everybody. Family, friends, work was different because I compartmentalize things and I know how to navigate work and be successful. I am successful. But it wasn't reflecting in my personal life, and it wasn't reflecting because I had all this emotion, I had all this anger, all this under the carpet emotion that I hadn't actually dealt with, like skin deep. It was all surface level. So when I was going to therapy a few years ago, we were making a difference. And then things happened, life happened, and I had to stop and then I had to start again. And the stopping of the therapy was almost also to work on the things I had learned, and also to allow life to take its course so that I was able to see and put into practice all the things that I'd learned from therapy. I am an imperfect person. We all are. We're imperfect people. But you know what makes us uniquely great is who we are destined to be, our purpose, our identity, who you are. People don't have the right to tell you who you are. You get to introduce yourself. Why do people get the right? Why do they get that? Is it affantry? I think that's the word, affantry, to tell you who you are. And then when you start to define yourself, it no longer fits in the mold of what they're used to because it's no longer serving them. How about we start serving ourselves, especially when you're used to constantly giving? Do you know how toxic my giving was? It was so toxic that I would give and give and give, and I would almost use the give to buy the love. And you can only buy love if you think that love doesn't exist, so you're buying what you think you don't have. Everybody has their own love language. I know how I need to be loved. And do you know how I need to be loved? By just being yourself. I need to be loved by just being yourself, just appreciating me the same way you know I appreciate you. And if those things do not exist, I can't coexist. Because I know what I bring to the table all the time. And I'm always bringing. Because I always want people to be better than me. So for me, it's like if I have something you need it, I give it to you. Because I know that the very, very ancestors that gave me this will replenish it. So I don't feel like I need to hoard anything. But you see, people who do not appreciate you, people who do not see your value, just take. They just take. They don't care. Because they know there'll be no consequences of constantly taking because they're used to you just giving. There's no rules of engagement in place. So people don't realise that there is give and take in relationships. And people say, oh, you shouldn't give to receive. Yes, you should. Let's just break that misconception. You should give to receive. Because when you keep taking from the garden, taken all the plants that you've planted, when you've taken all the harvest, who is going to replenish what you took out of the soil? Who is going to replenish? Somebody needs to replenish it so more can grow and more can be harvested. Who is sowing into your garden? Who? Versus who is harvesting from your garden? If the same level of harvesting is not being reciprocated in the sowing, there's a problem. There is a problem. You need to have boundaries in that garden. Rules of engaging in the harvesting of your garden. You have to. That's called life. Garden of life. People can't just be coming to just take. Do you know the level of healing that I've had to go through to even know that I was a garden? As far as I was concerned, I was just a bush of thorns, because this is what was told. People were telling me, you're this, you're that. Imagine saying to someone, I can't wait to have a daughter, and someone say to you, oh, are you sure? Because when you were growing up, he wasn't very nice. What do you mean I wasn't very nice growing up? How can somebody not be nice growing up? Did you ever take the time to ask me or get to know me? How could I not be nice growing up? I was a bloody teenager. Teenagers aren't meant to be nice. They're full of hormones, they're full of attitude, and they're full of confusion, some of them. So it is up to you to help me sober up from all of that and mold me into the right person. It's up to you to support me in my growth. Not tell me inadvertently, you're going to be a really shit mother because you were shit. You was a little shit growing up. Listen, let me tell you something. I've had to give myself permission to grieve pain. I've had to give myself permission to grieve disappointment, heartache. I've had to give myself permission to grieve some of the stupid decisions I made, hoping that people would love on me, center me, celebrate me, when they never showed me that they even had the capability to do it. I had to grieve my foolishness. I had to grieve my foolishness. When you're constantly making the same type of friends and your relationships are going in the same type of way, you need to know that the common denominator is you. What is it that you are doing? If you feel like you're having the rough end of the stick, what is it that you're doing that contributes for you to you being at that end of the stick? Why are you not holding the stick? Why you must be at the end all the time? This is the type of work I had to do. Listen, when I was younger, I did not know my place in the world. I was very angry. I was very emotional. I was very hurt. I was very misunderstood. I felt like I didn't belong in this world. I didn't belong here because I just didn't fit in. I was a bit of an oddball. I didn't fit in. I didn't feel like I fitted in with my family. At school, I was just a free spirit, but I know that now, but in school, I just felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt quite claustrophobic. I felt like I couldn't be understood. Now I know that part of that is because I was dyslexic. So my communication was different. How I communicate was different. And had I known that then, had it been known then, maybe I could have found other ways to kind of get that support and find other ways to express myself. I was from an African household where I was the oldest. So I was the guinea pig. You know, and I was not taught to express emotion. I've always been very surface level with emotion. Always been. And I didn't know that until I went into therapy. And my therapist asked me how I was. I was like, yeah, I'm doing fine. Really busy here, da 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 da. She goes, okay, but I didn't ask you that. I asked you, how has your day been? How do you feel? Oh, I'm fine. Da, da, da. No, that's not what I asked you. How do you feel in this moment? I'm asking you this question. I was confused. I was like, what do you mean I'm telling you? She goes, no, you're not. You're being surface level. You're not actually telling me anything. I'm not learning anything new about you. You're not sitting in the emotion that you're feeling. You've walked in with something other than yourself and how you feel. And I broke down into tears. I broke down into tears. Because for the first time in years, and I mean, or maybe even ever, I didn't even realize that I was surface level about my feelings. Because when you go into work, let's be honest, you turn up as your representative, right? You do. You have different variations of that representative. Either way, it's a representative. Then you are at home and you're the oldest. So you're that representative and all the things that come with being the eldest, all that baggage, right? Your friendships groups are filled with toxicity because you have learned all this stuff from different areas of your life. And now when you go into friendships that's supposed to be a bit more personable, you have a different representative for that relationship. Then you go through pain and friendship breakups. You carry that load. You're going through traumas at work, traumas in the home. When do you have time to sit in your emotions to be able to quantify what those emotions are and therefore find the words and feel the strength to express those emotions? When? Therapy saved my life in more ways than one. I'm very clear now. I'm very, very, very aware of self. I'm very aware of what toxic traits I still have. Sorry about that. I've got the window a little bit open and I'm in a certain part of London where clearly there's a lot of crime. No, I'm joking. Do you realise that unless you unlearn certain behaviours, unless you heal, unless you can confront yourself, you will just be carrying a ball of trauma in every situation you go into? Because let's put it this way, at work, you're working through past work trauma. Yeah? So when you go into the world of work, you're probably working through the trauma from the jobs before. And in each job, you're probably 1 or 2 jobs behind the trauma that you're working through. And then you are vulnerable because you know that you're a woman in the world of work. You know how the construct of the workplace has been created, and you're also a black woman in the world of work. You can't ever let your guard down, so you're always ready. If you're not ready with your burn folder, you're just ready to be able to understand at which point do you need to become a politician, how you navigate. That's very exhausting, okay? That's probably why I'm always tired by the time I come to record this, because I've done my whole navigate in the world of work, and whilst I'm still being successful in it, I am carrying a weight because I'm tired. Yeah? Then you deal with the complexities of family relationships, and they are not relationships that are stagnant. As you grow, evolve and develop, those relationships evolve and develop. And what you tend to find is that adult you is often incompatible with the relationships you have with family members because they see you in a certain way. They don't necessarily see the adult. They don't. They see the little girl or little boy that they have always seen. So growth is stunted because it's also not encouraged or often identified or discussed. You know, you are supposed to evolve and grow, and your relationships are supposed to do the same. But if it is not happening that way, it becomes toxic. Of course it does, because people are treating you as they would do if you were 4. You are now 44, you are now 34, you are now 24. But those relationships haven't evolved. And then on top of that, you carry weight of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, maybe a bit of anger, loads of toxicity, regret. And then you start feeling that you don't belong, trying to find your way in the world. Maybe you're still developing your identity. That is a lot to carry by yourself, especially if you do not trust people around you to be vulnerable enough to be more than just surface level. I get that. I genuinely think that as you get older, your priorities change. You know, you may get married, you may not. You may invest, you may just continue in the career ladder, you may have kids, whatever development looks like to you, it's still growth, right? And what you realise is, as you grow, certain things, certain people can't come on that journey. Either because they're not willing to encourage that growth, or they don't support the growth. When I gave you the garden analogy, you're either going to encourage that growth, yeah, but you keep watering it, or you're not going to, you discourage the growth, you just harvest what you like and take and move on. You are the garden. You are the garden of life, development, growth. And you get to decide who harvests. You get to have the expectation that people should sow by watering it too. You are allowed to have relationships that are give and take. Because if those relationships become one-sided, someone's garden is going to be full of weeds. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? I still find it very uncomfortable to center myself in things that I should do. Or when I'm, like, for example, when I got engaged, I found it really, really uncomfortable to celebrate it and center myself. I didn't feel comfortable being that center stage. No. Even when I met up with my bridesmaids, I made it about them. And it wasn't until someone pointed that out to me and says, this is about you. Why are you so uncomfortable with your own celebration? And I realised it's because I'm still working through that trauma. I'm still working through the things that have made me feel like I'm not important enough to be centred. I'm still working through the oldest child, oldest daughter syndrome that comes with a lot of baggage. And as I've been unpacking that baggage, I've realised that it's been an unfair load to carry, especially because my successes have never been celebrated by those who I have always celebrated. Especially because I recognise that in giving, I thought that would be enough for people to also recognise how I've added and therefore want to do the same. And I've had to also learn to change my own way of speaking, my own language, and recognise when people take advantage, because also as well, we have that episode about discernment, and I've had to really develop discernment in a way that's been truly a revelation. Because when you allow yourself to heal, you start then developing the skills to remain healed, or to remain in that growth that you've developed. And in remaining in the growth that you've developed, you have to get to a point of also accepting that in order for you to be in that growth, you had to fall down, or things had to happen to get to that point. And you never want it to get that far, right? But sometimes the greatest lessons we learn are from our mistakes. But then the difference between a mistake and I don't know what the word is. The difference between a mistake and, I don't know what the word is, but follow me here. The difference between a mistake and whatever else it is that I can't explain is your ability to understand it's a mistake and you grow from. But the thing that I can't explain is it isn't a mistake, and it's just a reoccurring perpetual cycle of what you're willing to accept because you're unwilling to do the work to heal, to understand and see things for what they are. I think definitely coming from an African family, and obviously I'm an African woman, we are not taught to challenge authority or challenge the things we don't understand. That's toxic, because you go into the world of work and you basically are opening the gate to be mistreated, because then you're taught not to challenge any type of authority. The word challenge is seen quite negatively, and I don't think challenge is negative. I mean, put it this way, for the last how many weeks now, our Oyibo counterparts have been in Trafalgar Square campaigning against the vaccine and vaccine passports. Why is it? Listen, let me tell you something about white people, especially in this country. When they don't want to do something, you will hear about it. That is encouraged. What do you call it? What do white people call it? Free speech. Yeah, when you're challenged. What are protests? Challenging an authority that seeks to impose something that people do not agree with. Yeah, that's encouraged. Let's be honest, it is encouraged. We see it in history, but when black people do it, it's a problem. Do you know what? It's aggressive. Yeah, it's threatening. It's threatening. Priti Patel will start drawing up laws and legislation and prohibiting black people from speaking out. But white people do this thing that I actually admire. You know what it is? They will protest. They will speak their piece and they won't look at no one. They don't care. These people that are protesting in, Trafalgar Square. Maybe you guys are thinking that these are just waif and strays. No, some of these people are CEOs, directors. Some of these people are a mix of the population of society, different classes. White people are encouraged to challenge things. They are. You know, in university and stuff, they call it debate. White people do it and they're waging war. And then what happens is it seeps its way in to the black family, where in black families, and I say black families because I can only speak from the position where I sit. We're not encouraged to do that. Parents and adults are always right. If they're always right, where is their growth? Because I'm so sorry. The last time I checked, they cut them human beings just like us. We're not taught to challenge things in the home. So now we're having to unlearn it so that we can challenge it at work. That is a lot. That is a lot. Because with the challenge comes fear. And we spoke a bit about that last week's podcast. 2 weeks ago, sorry, my mistake. We start to build toxicity in the home and then give it life outside of the home. Then when we grow into these adults, there's this expectation that we're well adjusted. Well, not all of us are. Some of us have to go to therapy to make sense of things that don't make sense, to understand that we are deserving of healthy relationships, to understand the positives of challenging authority and understanding how to challenge authority, using our words to do so, and understanding that the repercussion of not challenging things that we are not happy with will only result in anger, negativity, trauma. I'm saying all of this to say, you have to start centering yourself, especially if you know, put your hand on your heart, you know you're a selfless person. Especially when you know that your garden is full of weeds because everybody keeps harvesting at your garden and no one's replenishing. You need to learn to center yourself and get comfortable with celebrating yourself. You know, whenever somebody messages me about how they've used the Toy Talks platform, how it's, you know, transforming lives, I always say, enjoy this and celebrate this. This is a win. You have won. This is a celebration. And I do that because I know 9 times out of 10, winning is not always, we're not always taught what winning looks like. We're not always encouraged to celebrate the wins. But equally as well, if we celebrate our win, we are also centering ourselves. And we are allowed to be centered. We're allowed to be at the center. That is, it's okay for that to be our position. Let us unlearn some of this negativity around being first. Constantly seeking the approval of people who refuse to even see you. I want approval from myself. I want to feel and be happy without feeling like I have to take away from me to give to others so they're happy? Why is it that I'm able to identify happiness in others in a way that I couldn't identify it within myself? Do you know how toxic it is to feel guilty for being happy about things that you've sacrificed, and you've been able now to see the fruits of your labour, but feel guilty for celebrating those things? As if the only thing or feeling you should be feeling is negativity, is trauma. And the problem with that, for me, has been that I'm always chasing the next thing. Before I know about, I've got this thing, haven't celebrated it yet, but I'm chasing the next one. Because I don't allow myself to sit in the greatness of what that is that I have achieved. And all that will happen is, if one continues to be like that, you will be unfulfilled. You will be vacant. It'll be like a vacuum. And the things that you should enjoy are the things that people would crave, but you just see it as just another thing to tick. And it comes from being brought up in a culture, in a community whereby we've come from so much trauma that we're not encouraged to unlearn certain things, but we're also not taught what victory looks like. We're not. It's difficult to identify something you're not taught or you don't see frequently. So my question to you is, what does your success and your win and your happiness, what does that look like? How can you identify when you're happy with something or when you've achieved something? How do you celebrate that? How do you sit in your greatness when you've worked so hard and you've got something out of it? How do you acknowledge the blessing of what it is that you sacrificed to have? Because these are questions I've had to ask myself. And it will continue to be something that I develop constantly. Because I will achieve something, I'm looking for the next challenge. And whilst that's fine to an extent, it's not healthy. Because it often means that if you're not really fully appreciating what you went through to get that thing. It could be a job, it could be a pay rise. Sometimes you just have to sit in your greatness. And I have learned the importance of also who sits with me to celebrate that greatness. Not everybody can sit with you to celebrate your greatness, because not everybody was there when you're making the sacrifices, laying the foundation of the greatness that you have now harvested. Because when you were laying that foundation, you were sowing the seeds. And if the people that you are around are not celebrating and screaming for the rooftops, the things that you celebrate, you've got to think about the people you have around you. Because healthy relationships require give and take. Sometimes other people are in the centre and your job is to celebrate them. Sometimes you're in the centre and their job is to celebrate you. But at any one time, you should also be centred. I have always been that type of person that is just used to giving. And the problem is, when you give to the wrong people, people who know they can't give will always identify when you stop giving them, because they're used to just receiving it. My life is not set up like that anymore, because I've set my boundaries and rules of engagement with everybody. Work, family, friends, associates. You can't just access me when you like. There are rules to engaging with me, because I have spent so much money in therapy. In order to build and grow from therapy, I have to start putting them things into practice. I understand it's a gift to even be in therapy. Some people don't have the financial ability to put themselves through therapy. There is a blessing in being able to do that. I recognise that. It's a gift, huh? Not everybody can. But I will encourage, even if it's one session you do, please, please, please do it. It's like taking a specks of dirt from your eyes, looking in the mirror and seeing yourself. Do you know, how many of us have stood in front of a mirror and really seen ourselves? Like seen into your soul, seen you. I saw myself for the first time about 2 years ago. I looked into the mirror and I saw the person who I was told I would never be. And I looked in the mirror and the reflection was the person I always knew I could be, but never thought I deserved to be. I recognized that all the scars I was looking at was all the things that I had acquired through life because of my own decisions, indecisions, and the lack of my ability to trust myself. Then I made a promise to myself, and the promise I made was, I'm always going to show up as myself. I will always make the effort where it gets hard to remind myself of how I got here. I made the decision that I would have to start laying the foundation of how I was going to accept people engaging with me. I also accepted that I had given so much of myself because I was nursing pain that I was unwilling to confront. It was easier to give others than to give myself. Peace is at the center of my being. If you give me wala, you will get a wala. If you give me problem, I will give you wala. My wala is to walk away and leave you there. I don't need to take that on. I don't. And you know what? If it is wrong for me to walk away, then I'll take that. Because if I have to prioritize myself, and in doing that, I need to walk away, I'm willing to do it. People really underestimate the value of peace. Peace is, you can't even quantify peace. Peace is just being able to feel comfortable in your own skin. Peace is the ability to understand self. Peace is the ability to know your value and know and identify when you're not being valued. Peace is understanding what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. That's peace. So anybody who seeks to disturb my peace, I have to walk away from them. No one's going to cause me to raise my voice and get into an argument and start shouting. I'm not doing that. Because I don't have to. I know how I feel. Shouting is not going to make you receive the message of how I feel. You're choosing not to receive it. So even if I shout, you're still not going to get it. If I have to shout, we've got communication issues. And at my age, I don't feel as though I've come this far, invested this amount of money in therapy to have those communication issues with you. It's you not understanding how to communicate with me. And sometimes seeking peace is also knowing when to walk away. To that end, let me just take a slight little turn a corner a little bit. So I read in the media that Khloe Kardashian has taken Tristan Thompson back. And those of you who know Khloe Kardashian and Tristan Thompson have had a tempestuous relationship, to say the least. They share a beautiful daughter, True. And to be honest, watching Khloe Kardashian be treated in the way that she has chosen to be treated has really made me angry. It's made me angry because I feel like the issue isn't Tristan. It's made me angry because it unsettled something that was within me, that I recognised in my character that I had to go through therapy to work through. And it's the fact that Khloe Kardashian doesn't think that she deserves any type of happiness without some form of trauma. That a man is in your face, cheating, embarrassing and humiliating you, but yet you still think that your worth is connected to this person who doesn't identify and see your worth. This is somebody who continues to harvest from your garden, but instead of watering your garden, he's just throwing weed killer in. So can you see how when you don't have the positive picture, a healthy relationship with yourself, when you don't put in place boundaries and rules of engagement, when you place no value on you, then everything you touch and everything around you will receive you in that way and treat you in that way. He is treating her in the measure in which she allows people to treat her. He is treating her based on how she sees herself. She is dating to the level of her self-esteem, who is Tristan Thompson. That is who she feels. That's who she feels that she deserves. Can you imagine the level of self-loathing and a lack of self-worth that you have to accept that behavior, and then use having a child with that person as the excuse in which you are going to give yourself that you think is acceptable in justifying how this man has treated you? I put it to you that because Khloe Kardashian has always been the one that has been negatively addressed, so she's always been compared to her sisters, she's always kind of had the cruel comments about her weights and her look, she's the one that has never really been centered. It's always been Kim. She doesn't have the ability to center herself in that situation, because as far as she is concerned, she is trying to maintain something where she actually needs to heal from something. She needs to heal. What we're seeing in Khloe is someone who is broken. And what makes me angry is because that was me. It triggers something inside of me, because for a long time I was broken. And whilst I may not have been in toxic relationships, I had toxic relationships around me. I was part of toxic relationships. I was at the other end of it. I was always crying. Do you know, there was one time I said to myself, I have cried so many buckets full of tears that I'm still surprised I have tears to cry. It's not healthy to constantly being in a state of crying. Crying is not even an expression of emotion. It's actually an expression of brokenness. Maybe brokenness is an emotion, maybe, yeah, okay. It's an expression of brokenness. Crying. Something inside of you has broken a little. And it comes out in tears, but it's not coming out in an expression of actually the core of how you feel. It hasn't done that. And then if it's not dealt with, if you're not taught how to express that, it turns to anger. And then toxicity and all the rest. It's like a perpetual cycle. But then at the same time, I think to myself, well, Khloe, what needs to happen to get you to... You have access to some of the greatest therapists in the world. You do. This is now a choice. Tristan is used to a constant cycle where he belittles, he cheats, he disrespects, he takes, he emotionally weaponizes and abuses. He takes all of that. And yet she still thinks that is okay to have in her life. Listen, I'm not judging anybody, but I had to also address why that triggers me. Every time I hear about them two, I get irritated. You can't have meaningful relationship if you're constantly living with toxicity. You can't have healthy relationships if you will constantly have one relationship that continuously is toxic. At some point, you're going to assimilate that toxicity. So you're going to be doing the work to unlearn all that toxicity, only to be replacing it with more. That's the truth. Listen, I don't know who needs to hear this. I was prompted to come in here and say this. I wanted to share in the way that we usually do every week, but I thought it was really, really important to kind of break it down. Who's sowing into your garden, sis? So, you, me, This episode is dedicated to the Black Queen, who in episode 64 wrote in with her dilemma, Toya Talks, I need your help, less than 6 hours after my performance review. My role was advertised. I'm not going to rehash it. There's a podcast episode, go have a listen. And what I love so much is this Black Queen has shown a thankful heart, because she has remembered to come back and give us the conclusion to her dilemma. So as much as possible, I helped her through the podcast. I sent her emails or DMs, I can't remember, and I gave her some advice. She listened to the podcast. There's specific episodes I told her to go and listen to, and everything I said to her, she put into practice. I do need to let you guys know that everything that she was going through in the workplace, she was also paralyzed with a level of fear of, losing her job, and we've dealt with that in a previous episode, but also fear of the fact that she really wanted to get her mortgage. She centered her mortgage above herself, and I had to remind her that, my dear, unless you fight for your job, the mortgage is the least of your worries. You need to choose yourself. You need to center yourself. You need to serve yourself, and everything else that is supposed to be a push into you will find its way. It will fall into place. The ancestors, so kind, she listened. And here is the conclusion to her dilemma. Good evening, sis. I hope you are well. Well, where do I start? Let me start off with thanking you for every little guidance and advice you have provided. I wouldn't have had the courage to go beyond without your support. So following the above, my grievance was heard. They had to source a legal team because their virtual HR lady couldn't handle the case. The grievance was very tamed and to the point. My union stepped up regarding each point of the grievance, and we delivered. They asked what I'd like the outcome to be, and my response was, I'd like my grievance to be heard. Following from their legal team, they said they'll be in touch once they interview everyone mentioned, and the main villain. From that day, the CEO attempted to bully me and manipulate me in his office, despite being aware of the current legal case. I made a conscious decision not to return to the office and work from home until the issue was dealt with. As the day went by, the CEO and his wife would send me passive-aggressive emails, and it was just disguised as bullying. I had to put myself first. Can you see? She had to center herself. I decided I was going to resign with immediate effect and continue the process externally. That was probably her first. She made very smart moves. This is one of the moves that I think was very smart. She centered herself. Just because you leave an organisation doesn't mean you leave behind the grievance complaint. No. Because she could rely on the fact that she was constructively dismissed, and therefore the case remains ongoing, and she knew this. My assistant also called me on the same day and said she was leaving with a week's notice because she feels like she's being used as a pawn. Higher management had never made an effort to even communicate with her. Now suddenly they're aware of the claims of racism, etc. They're now making the effort with her, including the lady my grievance was against. Long story short, I resigned. Long story short, my assistant resigned, and I resigned a couple of days after, with immediate effect. Again, the CEO tried bullying me and suggested I could not continue the case if I decided to resign with immediate effect. My legal team quickly stepped in and corrected him, or shall I say, stopped him from driving narratives that don't exist. Anyway, sis, few days before resigning with immediate effect, I got a new job, paying me £15,000 more. By the way, I didn't know I got the job before I resigned. It just worked out to be great timing. Anyway, so the case continued. I was provided an update a week or so later. The grievance was partially upheld, but not fully. They gave me time within reason to appeal. I didn't bother appealing and playing a silly game with guilty fools. So instead, my legal team directed me to ACAS, early reconciliation process. Sis, the company was shaking. They underestimated me. Anyway, my advisor at ACAS done his thing. I got paid a 4-figure payout. Started a new job, £15,000 higher, and my mortgage was approved a couple of days ago. God, sis, I'm crying as I write this to you. This is a testimony. You really did tell me. They honestly underestimated me. They thought I couldn't pay legal fees like them too. They thought I'd give up. They thought all sorts, and they were wrong. And I hope they learn from this experience, because black people are capable. I feel like a superwoman. I'm so proud and honoured. I'm so blessed. Thank you so much, Toya. I can't thank you enough. Honestly, I sat there, listened to a majority of your podcast, gained an entire level of confidence, and I went for it. I felt educated and, most importantly, confident. One major thing I took away from your advice was to put my emotions to one side. It's a distraction. Once I'd done this, the journey was different, insightful, life-changing. They were sending me disgusting emails, excluding me from meetings, remove my name from bounce-back emails, etc. All sorts. I just closed my eyes and focused on what needed focusing on. Because in the end, if this went to court, I can't take he said, she said to court. But what I can take is facts and receipts. Once I had that mindset, I was good. Also, my trade union was a man of colour who specialised in racial discrimination. He was dropping gems. Their jaws were just dropping, one by one. Burn folder activated. Anyway, she goes on, and it's a bit more personal, the things that she goes on about. Sorry, I don't know why I'm feeling so emotional. I think it's because I know how this started with her. I remember the message that she sent me, and the emotion I feel is just pure joy, because I understand, believe me when I tell you, what it is like to work somewhere and just feel so broken. And through this Toya Talks journey, by educating, teaching you, guiding you, advising you, and giving you the tools to navigate the world of work safely, success is ours. It's not all peaches. And she had to learn the hard way. But can you see, when you do things with clean heart, clean mind? She came to me humbly. I gave her the advice. She took the advice. She centered herself. She put her emotions to one side. She applied for jobs. She didn't just stop. She continued applying for jobs because she knew deep down inside that she couldn't go back there. But she had to go the course. I always ask when people send me a dilemma, what do you want out of this? And she was asked the same question. They asked her that. So it's not a question that she's new to. I asked her. She said, I just want to be heard. I want my grievance to be heard. Then you apply for other jobs as you're going through this, despite them trying to throw all types of missiles at you. You get a job that's paying you £15,000 more. You get a 4-figure payout. And the one thing that you wanted more than anything was your mortgage. I'm telling you right now, I know for a fact that Toya Talks podcast and platform are changing the lives of black women all over the world, irrespective of what industry you work in, irrespective of what you do for a living. It is changing the way we navigate work, because success is ours. You have to make the choice. Are you going to center yourself in the success that you want to achieve? Are you willing to go through the woods and the trees and cut down all the distractions to be able to achieve what you want? Are you really going to assimilate the information and the gems, the tools, the things that I am giving on this podcast that nobody gave me? I had to go through the hot, hard lessons to be able to sit here, give you this podcast and give you all the tools, knowing that, yes, I've been successful, but I had to go through the hard lessons earlier on. Then when I started twigging and it started to make sense, how I am able to navigate these white spaces to get what I want, I knew that, listen, you guys have heard all the stories here. There's so many more things that I have to share on this podcast. Because, listen, the road to success is not smooth, especially when you're dealing with white people in white constructs that don't want to see us. It's not going to be easy. So any of you that are burying your head in that sand, at one point you have to come up for air. This young lady centered herself. She said, Toya, I had to resign. Then as she resigned, her assistant resigns. Listen, people, what did I say earlier on the podcast? I said people want peace. It's not everyday fight. But if you want to fight, give it to you. But fundamentally, people just want peace. This young lady just wanted to have her discrimination claim heard, her grievance heard. That's it. To be treated like a human being, to not be ignored, to not be kicked down the road like a can of beans. No! When she stripped back the emotion, which is difficult, it is hard. But when you're dealing with people who do not want to see you, if you go and meet them with that, your emotion, they will treat you in such a way you wouldn't even see it coming. When you remove the cobwebs and the speck from your eye, put that emotion to one side, compartmentalize it, and focus on the task at hand, you will get what you deserve. You will win. You will. Winner, 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 winner. We black women are winners. Hey, winner, 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 winner. We black women are winners. I will always center black women in Toya Talks. Listen, this whole Toya Talks platform is for black women. It is for black women. We need it. We need it. We need it. All these testimonies people are coming back to say as a direct result from what they've learned from Toya Talks. Is it not testimony to the fact that success is ours? And you know, success is huge. It's not just designated for one person, but you have to start making choices. And those choices have to be, are you going to center yourself? This is a win. I told her, make sure you celebrate this one. Celebrate them. There's so many of them. You have to celebrate it. She cannot believe what's happening. The lessons that she learned. I said, this new job, before I could finish, she said, Toya, I've already started the burn folder. Don't worry, I just opened it there. Yes. Because listen, we all know that anywhere you go, while a day. Because we are best in class at what we do. It doesn't mean they want to see us there. They want to give us tough time, oppress and subdue us, so that as they are giving us their bullshit, we're just there nodding our head. God forbid bad thing. That's not our portion anymore. Why does our existence have to be intrinsic with trauma? It doesn't. These people are now shaking. They're traumatized. How can a CEO of a company say, well, if you're going to leave with immediate effect, you can't continue this grievance? Who said on what planet? But they come with this confidence. Listen, one thing you can never fault white men for is confidence. Some of them don't even have not even common spelling tests to rub together. They will come with a level of confidence like you've never seen before. White privilege is a bastard. White privilege is a bastard. Yes! Imagine standing on 6 yellow pages. That's white privilege. The platform to feel a level of confidence, thinking that you are sitting on a higher something purely because of the color of your skin. That you have the effrontery to go to someone and say, well, if you're leaving with immediate effect, you can't continue with it. Who said? Because I think the owner of the vineyard, they think that they can bully you and they rely on us to be ignorant. That's what I've realized. They rely on us to be ignorant. And some of us have been ignorant for years. Yes. Listen, I was ignorant early stages of my 20s. Then I started being delivered from my ignorance. And I had to start boxing clever, starting observing them, understand how the system works. I had to take a couple of them on. Yeah, I had to take a couple of them on. I had to understand. Oh, so you don't see me as a human? Okay, so you don't see me coming. I've always told you guys, being underestimated as a black woman is your greatest superpower. Even when they act like they underestimate you, my dear. Because white privilege is a bastard that doesn't even allow them to see us as human. So just because of white privilege, they already underestimate you. Facts. You can't have white privilege without the underestimation of black people. You can't. They coexist together. So it's better that you learn that you're not going to dismantle racism. It's not going to happen. I don't think any single person can dismantle racism. But you know what you can do? You can shit on the face of racism. You know how you can do that? By acquiring the skills to be able to confront it, deal with it, and deliver some of them from their madness. Now when these two, husband and wife, gang spirit, see another black woman, they'll know how to come correct. And if they don't, the same thing will happen again. Yeah. And that's on Mary Had a Little Lamb, her feet was white as snow. And then her feet was white as snow. Oh, even this song is even racist. What's all this? Oh, no. That's just on Mary Had a Little Lamb. Forget the rest of it. Oh, God. Honestly, like, I dedicate this episode to that black queen. I am so tremendously proud of you for advocating for yourself. You know, we have that podcast episode, advocating for yourself, centering yourself, understanding the assignment that had been apportioned to you, using the tools of the Toya Talks podcast to be able to stand firm in your assignment. And you scored an A++++++. Winner. The sooner you understand that you are a winner, deserving to win, I'm telling you, even the most difficult of workplaces, when they put you into a tight corner, you will say, no, you can't put black women in the corner. We've got a podcast episode called that. You can't put us in a corner. Because queens are not supposed to be in corners. Queens are supposed to be on thrones with crowns. We are regal black queens. They see the sign of queendom on our foreheads. They see it. They fear it. The greatest thing you can do for yourself is acquire knowledge. Because knowledge is power. Their greatest fear is that we will be stronger than them. That fear will be realized. Yeah? Because you can't keep us oppressed forever. No condition is permanent. And what we are seeing as we confidently challenge the system, we share what we have learned, we grow in confidence, we start to dismantle what underpins racist structures. Did you hear? We start to dismantle what underpins racist structures. While there is breath in my body, I will continue to teach black women how to navigate the world of work successfully, and in turn develop the tools to highlight the path of success. Success is attainable for all of us. Success is yours. Do you choose success? I do. With success comes freedom. With freedom comes more freedom. The breaking of generational curses. Trauma is not ours. Back to sender. Back to sender. It's not even Sunday. Look at you are getting sermon. Sermon for the week. Sermon for the soul. And anybody who is listening to this episode or listening to the podcast episode, yeah? So non-black people, let me tell you something. As black women, we have been through hell. You couldn't even begin to understand what we go through. Our existence has always been attached to something that does not belong to us. Oppression doesn't belong. I ask you this. Whatever it is that you feel that you've learned, create situations so that oppression and bullying, racism, discrimination does not have to be part of the existence of any black queen in a workplace. We're not a threat to you. We're only a threat to you if you consider us your enemy. I'm not anybody's enemy. Maybe I'm yours, you're not mine. Yeah? You know who my enemy is? The devil. You are not my enemy. But if you want us to work in harmony, in tandem, you have to understand that success is attainable and should be to everybody who wants to participate in the assignment of success. And as far as I am concerned, Toya Talks as a podcast and a platform centers Black women always. Always. Those organizations that keep sliding into my emails asking me for free something, stop. Because if I start opening my mouth, you know you can't handle. Stop. The same way I sow the seeds into my community is the same way you must sow your seeds, white corporations, into me. You gotta sow it in order to reap it. Yeah? Black History Month is coming. Everybody's doing ja 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 ja. Pay me what I'm due. Yeah? That's how it. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, all this public speaking, I must charge you because number one, my value comes at a price. Yes, it does. Because as I'm sowing into your workplaces, I have to make the sacrifice to do the work to be able to position myself to be able to deliver what it is that you want. Secondly, because of reparations, you've got to pay me. Thirdly, Black women deserve to be paid, not what they're worth. What our worth is priceless. You can't afford us. We are worthy of the wage that we negotiate. You should pay it. Yeah, you should. You are used to us not knowing our value. Yeah? And remember how we started this podcast? We are almost taught that we're worthless. We can't do this, we can't feel this, we can't. Nah. The speck has been cleaned from our eyes. So we see ourselves in HD. You know what HD is? HD squared. That's how I see myself. So there's no freeness around here. There's no freeness around here. You should stop looking at Black women as a meal ticket to something free. No. We are allowed to earn more than equal to our white counterparts. We deserve that promotion. We deserve that success. And we are coming to take it. And if you don't see it, another company will. And that's on the Toya Talks podcast. Anyway, my Black queens, let's leave it there. I dedicate this episode to the Black queen who has shared with us her success story. We are proud of you. We are, fellow Black queen. Please sit up tall so that your crown will be straight. You are an amazing, amazing woman because you took it on, you saw it to the end, and you're testifying of the success. And I'm very, very proud. As we all are, I'm sure all of you will join me. Winner, 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 winner. We Black women are winners. So, as we draw this episode to a close, until next week, Tuesday, I just want to humbly come and tell you, people, you know, I've discovered TikTok on my time, TikTok. Yeah. And I've decided, as another creative outlet, now and again, I'm going to upload some TikToks and I'm going to literally have fun and take the piss out of work-related stuff. And I think it's important that we, if possible, if we are creative, we find our creative outlets, but also as well, there are things that happen in the workplace. And I definitely feel as though, you know, at work sometimes, especially where I work in my job, it can be quite stressful. And in between meetings, I've got a couple of hours, I will upload a TikTok. Let's all laugh. Ha ha ha, he he. Show me all your tits. Let's laugh. My TikTok handle, wait, Toya, what's the TikTok handle? Toya_Washington. Go ahead and follow me on TikTok. Just recently joined, so still finding my feet and everything. But, you know, anyone that knows me knows I love to laugh. I love to laugh. So let's take the piss out of workplace and all this shenanigans that they be doing all the time. Let's go and laugh, dear. If you want to follow me on my Instagram page, then my Instagram page handle is Toya_Washington. The Toya Talks Instagram page is Toya_Talks. And of course, you can follow me on Snapchat, Toya Washington, all one word. If you have a work-related dilemma, your anonymity will be protected. Please email hello@toyatalks.com. I know that I do have some dilemmas in the inbox, and I will be reading them out next week. I apologise, we have run out of time this episode, but I will address them next week. So please be patient. I will come back to you. Thank you so much for your support, your encouragement, your love, for sharing, for promoting the Toy Talks podcast, for resharing, for tweeting, for everything that you do to support the Toy Talks podcast, because it is here for you, about you, and it's for us to be able to have a safe space to share. And I hope that this podcast episode has resonated with you. And as always, take care of yourself and each other. Until next week, I will see you for a brand new episode of the Toy Talks podcast. Make sure you take care of yourselves, take care of each other, share, tweet, hashtag, and have a great week, everyone. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.